I guess you've all heard about Salem, USA, famous for its witch trials in 1692. Every year in October it hosts a month-long festival in celebration of Halloween. Rich in Wiccan history, it is now known as the Witch City. Well, what if I told you that here, in the East Riding of Yorkshire, UK, we have our very own Salem? Now, there wasn't any documented witch hunters in Pocklington, unlike Salem, USA, or Pendle, or Bury St Edmunds in the UK, but the town certainly had its own fair share of witches. Before we talk about witches though, let's take a look at the history of Pocklington and see if we can gain any insights. Pocklington, the small market town, sat at the foot of the Yorkshire Wolds, roughly halfway between the town of Market Wheaton and the city of York. Written history goes back to the year 650 AD. The town had the same name but spelt slightly different. The name comes from the Old English way of saying postal clan's settlement. This was the name of the Anglo-Saxon clan that lived in the area at the time. However, there has been worked flint, used in the Neolithic era by humans, found in the area, which could put civilization in Pocklington anywhere up to 12,000 years ago. But with a documented and proven history through archaeology of around 2,500 years, this makes Pocklington older than its neighbouring city of York and also older than the capital city of London. The Parisi tribe were a Celtic tribe that inhabited the area of East Yorkshire in the Iron Age. They mainly farmed the area for bronze and iron, but due to the value of such metals at the time, they also had an army of warriors defending the territory. Archaeological finds suggest that they made Pocklington their main settlement in the area. During Roman times, Pocklington wasn't really used by the Romans, as they had their main garrison in the city of York. However, they did have a bathhouse here. If you've watched episode 1, then you'll be aware that the Romans wrote about a mysterious, undiscovered town named Delgavica. Well, because of the location and the bathhouse, this makes Pocklington a strong contender for being this town. But with the little history known about this Roman town, we may never find out the true location of the mysterious and elusive Delgavica. Now, during Roman times, the Celts remained in Pocklington, which suggests the Celts lived alongside the Romans in this area in relative harmony. In the Domesday Book of 1086, Pocklington was noted as being the second largest settlement in Yorkshire, the largest being the city of York. Pocklington has a canal that was used for transporting coal and agricultural goods up until the 20th century, until the railways took over. The railways are also long gone now. The town also has an airfield, although now it is predominantly used for recreational purposes and hosts a long-standing World's Gliding Club. It was used during the Second World War for loading bombs onto Allied aircraft. Just a few minutes walk from the airfield leads you to the Pocklington School.
This private day and boarding school is over 500 years old. It was founded in 1514 and is set in 50 acres of land. Its sports hall is situated in the old train station and even has an armed forces and cadet centre. Famous alumni include William Wilberforce, the famous campaigner for the abolition of the slave trade, Lord Moran, who was the private physician to Sir Winston Churchill, Adrian Edmondson, well known for co-writing and starring in the comedy shows The Young Ones and Bottom, and Ralph Ineson, who acted in Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, and his voice was used in the video game Assassin's Creed. The All Saints Church, situated roughly in the centre of the town, is the oldest building in Pocklington. Its foundations have been dated to Saxon times, but most of the rest of the building is dated to between the 12th and the 15th century. Here's an interesting story about the church regarding a man originally from Lincoln named Thomas Pelling, the famous flying man. On the 10th of April 1733, he decided to carry out an amazing stunt. Thomas attempted to rope walk from the church spire to the Star Inn situated in Market Square. The Star Inn has long gone and has been replaced by shops. However, the length of the rope walk would have been roughly 100 paces. Pretty impressive feat, or at least it would have been if he had made it. He got to the east end of the church and fell, fracturing his skull against the wall, and landed just here. Unfortunately, he didn't survive the fall. And just 6 days later, on the 16th of April 1733, he was buried right here where he landed. There is a plaque on the wall above where he is buried to commemorate his unfortunate but epic fail. Look at this. It's huge. This is the Sotheby Cross. Well, actually, it's a very magnificent replica. The original head of the cross is located within the church itself. The Sotheby Cross was commissioned by the Sotheby family, who famously founded the world-renowned Sotheby's Fine Arts Auctioneers. The family originated in Lincoln, but moved to Pocklington somewhere around the year 1380. They had the cross made sometime in the 15th century in memory of John Sotheby, who was a vicar and important member of the Pocklington community. It also has Latin writing inscribed around the base, pertaining to St. Paulinus, who was sent by Pope Gregory the Great to convert the Anglo-Saxons to Christianity. He preached in Pocklington in AD 627. The intricate stone carving around the top of the cross is truly magnificent, and if it is a true likeness to the original, then this is even more impressive, considering the tools used to carve stone in the 15th century must have been primitive compared to the tools and techniques used today. The original Sotheby Cross was actually found buried in the churchyard in 1835, whilst workers were digging a grave. It was likely buried to protect it during the English Civil War during the mid-1600s. In 1890, a sealed bottle containing a message of work done to the church during the time, and a newspaper from the time, was buried beneath the cross. But in 2005, during repairs to the church and the churchyard, the bottle was accidentally dug up. It was reburied with a copy of the Pocklington Post newspaper showing the current date. Now, the All Saints Church is an impressive building, but something that has sparked my interest is the carvings on the church. Among the once ornate but age-worn carvings are 21 heads depicting green men, gods, goddesses, fruits, and flowers of Celtic and Pagan origin. Now, these would have been adorned to attract people who practiced pagan and Celtic religions and ideologies in the church. But the fact that they would need to place these in the time period would suggest that there was still a large pagan and Celtic presence even then.
Among all the history we've learned so far, one of the things that stands out to me is the strong links to Celtic Britain. But the links don't end there.
During recent decades, Pocklington has seen a lot of growth. A fairly large estate has now been built on the mile, heading out of Pocklington towards the Yorkshire Wolds. Now, during building, an extremely important piece of Celtic history was uncovered.
The grave of a Celtic warrior dating from between the years 320 and 174 BC. This warrior must have been someone particularly important. He was buried with his horses, chariot, shield, a precious brooch, and sacrificed piglets. His ornate bronze shield measured 30 inches across, and this shield wasn't just for show either. It had marks and battle scars where it had been hit with swords. He was placed within his chariot, and this was positioned with his horses to look like it was leaping out of the grave. If only there was photography at the time, this would have been such a sight.
Heading out of Pocklington, a different way towards the Wolds, is St Helens Wood. Many years ago, this was actually a forest, and within this forest is St Helens Well. This is all that's left of St Helens Well now, but St Helens Well was a natural spring water formation in the area. During Celtic times, natural spring water was believed to have magical healing and rejuvenating properties. William Ullathorne, who was appointed Archbishop of Birmingham in 1850, was born in Pocklington in 1806. He wrote of a pagan tradition in his childhood at Pocklington. Every Easter, the townsfolk would all congregate in the forest at St Helens Well. The children would have sweet drinks, and the adults would drink wine and spirits, all of which was mixed with spring water from the well. They would pick flowers and enjoy themselves with great freedom. This annual event seems to be steeped in pagan Celtic tradition and in fairly recent history too. Now, the word pagan is used for ancient religions, beliefs and ideologies that predate Christianity, and we know from historical finds that Pocklington was an area enriched in Celtic culture.
The Celts would use animals as a sacrifice to their gods. These would mainly be livestock or working animals and would usually be burnt or buried. There has been some evidence of human sacrifices made by the Celts as well, but these sacrifices were usually people who had wronged them. Wiccans, or witches as they are more commonly called, follow remarkably similar beliefs and practices to the Celts. I'd like you to remember this as we take a look at the witches and witchcraft of Pocklington. The 16th and 17th centuries were the age of the Puritans. They actively opposed anything to do with ancient religions, branding people as witches and wizards and sentencing them to death, quite often after horrible torture methods were used to interrogate them. Now, although the actual witch hunters of the time weren't necessarily Puritans, we can safely assume that there was Puritan influence in their actions.
Pocklington has 3 recorded cases of witchcraft. The first of these was Old Wife Green. She was burned at the stake on March 3, 1630 for being a witch. right here in this market square. You can just imagine the crowds of people watching her and jeering as she met her demise. Old Wife Green was the last ever witch in England to be documented as burned at the stake for witchcraft.
Roughly a year later, in the September of 1631, plague hit Pocklington. It lasted just under a year and claimed 49 people. Coincidence?
Next on our list of witches is Petronelle Haxby, the wife of a local blacksmith. She was also executed here on March 4, 1642 for witchcraft. It wasn't recorded how she was executed though. There is a strong possibility that she was burned because people at the time believed that this was the safest way to destroy any chance of a witch coming back to life. However, not all witches were burned, so without any evidence, Old Wife Green still holds the record for being the last witch proven to be burned at the stake. Interestingly, around a year later, a Thomas Dobson was buried in Pocklington on the 24th of March 1643. Cause of death, you ask? Bewitchment.
Now our last witch, and possibly the most famous of them all, is Pocklington woman Isabella Billington. Isabella, at the age of 32, was sentenced to death in York. Her crimes? Well, there was two lesser crimes of offering a burnt calf and a burnt cockerel as sacrifices, but her main crime, and the one that gave her the death penalty, was for crucifying her own mother. She was not alone in this act. Isabella's husband was also sentenced to death for assisting her in this gruesome crime. They were both hanged on York Knavesmire on the 30th of April 1649. 19 others were hanged that day for various crimes. You can hear more of her story in the York Dungeons History Museum.
So there we have it, Pocklington, East Yorkshire's very own Salem, full of witches and witchcraft. But it does leave me with one question. Were they really witches? Or were they just practicing age-old traditions and beliefs that the great Celts left behind as a legacy to their descendants?
Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more episodes of History, Mystery and ... Please like, share, comment and don't forget to subscribe to keep updated with new episodes and content on Eddie Mills Media.